Greetings, St. Joseph the Worker and beyond. This is another sampling of parish visioning, another video on parish visioning within the context of the joy of the gospel. And today I want to speak particularly about parish values and what do parish values mean for St. Joseph the Worker? What are our parish values? And it all flows, of course, from the context that we've already built around parish visioning, this idea that we have a parish vision rooted in the gospel, which leads us to set priorities. And we named 3 of them. Do you remember what they are now? Inclusive community, faith formation, and social justice, which reminded us of our roots, our foundations, what we came from. We are essentially a sacramental community, a community that serves in a Franciscan in charism parish. We're now looking at our parish values, and we have a diagram that, if you haven't seen it yet, you will see it, which explains, which sort of just names, let's put it this way, it names our values and connects them to our roots, but they're not necessarily our roots. They're not our foundations. They're not our priorities. They all stem ultimately from the gospel. And where did we get these? Where did we get these words that we've identified? We got them really from you. Throughout this process, the process of the Faith and Food Supper series, there were all these words that kept coming up over and over and over again, and we worked with it and tried to narrow it down and set priorities from it, but there were all these words that they're still there. And we're like, the people of God have spoken these things. They've identified these. They've said these are our values. They matter to us. It matters to us to be these things, to be in this way. So I'm just going to run through the particular values that we could not ignore. And it's not an exhaustive list. There are more. But nonetheless, these we hold dear as a community of faith here at St. Joseph the Worker. The concept of dialogue, diversity, inclusion, encounter, service, Franciscan charism, simplicity, sense of belonging, being a sense of belonging, evangelization, and engagement. So what are our parish values? These are our parish values. Would you like me to repeat them? Dialogue, diversity, inclusion, encounter, service, Franciscan charism, simplicity, sense of belonging, evangelization, and engagement. But what is the difference between a parish value and a parish priority? Good question. I'm still trying to work out that in my head, in fact. But values all flow from the gospel, and there's a lot of gospel values out there. This is not an exhaustive list. We choose to prioritize certain things because we're truly inspired by the gospel. But there are other things about ourselves that are there, and they're not really about where we come from. This is a reflection of who we are now and how we see ourselves today. It's a reflection of our diversity. And obviously, not everyone in our community is going to identify with every one of these values. Well, I wonder why they wouldn't. But at the same time, there might be other things that others would say, no, this is really more important to me than that. But the fact of the matter is, you can't value one thing and value its enemy, value the opposite. For example, you cannot value engagement and value disengagement at the same time. I cannot value a rare steak, which I do, and value a well-done steak at the same time. I cannot value sushi, which I really do, and wait a minute, sushi has no opposite. You know why sushi has no opposite? Because sushi is divine. Oh, it transcends everything. Oh, it's wonderful. Okay, so we've talked a lot about a lot of these things already. You know, the sense that we value being a community in dialogue, a community that converses, a community that, you know, uh, where you're not afraid to come and speak to your pastor. I know many of you have said that, and I'm glad that that's the case, that you're not afraid. Uh, I got to be, not afraid to speak to you at the same time. But of course, it goes beyond that. We have to be not afraid to speak to each other. If we value dialogue, we value communication. We don't value miscommunication or non-communication. We don't value silence in that sense. We value diversity, which means we don't value exclusivity, and we don't value a sense of uniformity. No, we value difference, unity and difference, and inclusion, in fact, comes up as a value, but inclusion was something that came up as a strong theme, really strong theme throughout our conversations, both statedly and implicitly, which is why it got elevated, I would say, to a priority, inclusive community, a sense of encounter. We value entering into something. We want to be led into a relationship beyond ourselves, something that truly inspires us and gives us life. We value service, also something essential to who we are, as well as being Franciscan. Simplicity. I just throw in spontaneity as part of something attached to simplicity. We don't need to make life complicated here at St. Joseph's the Worker, and I think we are simple in the good sense. It's sometimes simple gets a negative connotation, but it really is a gospel value when we can have our 2 feet on the ground and not trying to live in some pie in the sky idea of what it means to be Christian. And that has to be reflected in everything we do, in the way we worship, in the way we interact, in the way we communicate, etc., etc., the way we minister, the way we teach, etc., etc. A sense of belonging. This is so important. It's so important that we have a sense of belonging. And I know that folks, when they are engaged at St. Joseph the Worker, they are engaged because they have a sense of belonging. They feel they have a sense of ownership in this community. And I think that is truly important, like engagement itself being a value. We really work hard to bring people into a relationship with the church where they are involved and sent on a mission to evangelization, which is why evangelization itself is a value. What is a value? A value is something important to us. A value is something that matters to us. And we all have many things that matter to us, but these are a sampling of the values that we as a parish community hold in common. Why do I say that? How do I know that? Because you told me so. Because during our Faith and Food Supper series, you expressed these things. They're laced throughout the supper notes. We can't ignore these words. We can't ignore these values. Nor can we do what is contrary to them. We must make it, and I don't want to use the word priority because I've used that word already, but we must give attention to our values in the sense that we must allow ourselves to be led and guided by these things which flow from the gospel and not try to be anything contrary to our values. As Christians, we are deeply rooted in our faith in Christ Jesus that teaches us who we are. These are values that are lived by Christ himself, modeled by the saints, and define us, just like many other things we've discussed, just like our roots as a faith community, as a community rooted in Christ Jesus ourselves. They are gospel values. They matter to us. And these values will guide all of our decision making going forward.